guys, thanks for joining us for what is our second episode now, Greggy. We've made it to 2.
We've done well.
Big first week for us, big learning curve on the job, and we probably need to pay a bit of a homage, I guess, to Keith, our executive producer, I guess you call him in this field.
Like this industry that we're in now.
But look, Keith's a guy who's been behind the scenes. He's a guy who's doing all the things like social media, Facebook, Instagram, keeping that going along. So thanks, Keith, for your side. We don't see Keith here, but really appreciated a lot of the work that he's doing, keeping it going. He's there behind the camera right now. So
thanks to Keith. Let's move on.
So, Greggy, let's get into it. Well, wasn't it great to be talking about the footy this week rather than what's been happening in the last pre-season, I guess, in the last few months?
Yeah.
And some of the great tries, hits, comebacks. Well, footy round one, lots of a few sort of shocks, I guess. And round one's always hard to pick, and it's a difficult one to make. Oh, I can't pick anyway, regardless.
Some huge hits.
But great to talk about footy again, and rather than all the other things that were going on. So let's have a look at this week's round that's just finished. So let's have a look at the first game. The first game, the kickoff. Great game, I thought. Broncos and Melbourne, or Melbourne and Broncos down in Melbourne.
You've got to put the Broncos first somewhere, don't you? Yeah. Melbourne and Broncos, great game. It set the tone for the rest of the weekend. I think they said there were 6 penalties, maybe 7 penalties, and the players said the game flowed so much better than what it has previous years. So hopefully that continues. Yeah, a lot of promise for both sides, if you ask me. The halfback 5'8" at Brisbane still troubles. Still see troubles there.
I see Fittler came out today and said perhaps Sean O'Sullivan might be an option. The recruit from the Roosters, Nick Reamer at 14. Look, I watched that game intently as everyone did. First game of the season. I think Broncos were always clawing along to be with Melbourne. I think there was a time of 16-12. That was probably not a real reflection of the game. Melbourne seemed to control it with Munster. He just stepped up another level as good players do, and I don't think Brisbane could combat that.
Yeah, I think the big problem with the Broncos, what I saw was that on the 5th tackles, there was a bomb from 45 metres out. I went, you've got to try something different. I think 4 or 5 sets. I'll go and set with Melbourne there for a while, but then what they do is just put a midfield bomb up, and I was going, probably could try something else. So that's just where I think their halves. The halves been around long enough now, so maybe your O'Sullivan things might come to fruition.
Matt Lodge, he played well, but it was a silly penalty and deserving of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look at game 2, Friday night, the first of 2 games on Friday night. Newcastle hosted Cronulla, great crowd down there.
Yeah.
It looked like it was a tough dour game. I think the halftime score, there was probably only about 2 points, 4 points.
2 all.
Yeah. And Newcastle ran out victors at the end from a former Cronulla player, Edric Lee.
Yes.
Intercept pass. What's your thoughts on that game?
Good result, because you know my thoughts on the Sharkies. So good result. Newcastle, they could push the 8 this year, which is good because they draw crowds. So very good result for them, for the area, and I think for the game.
Mm-hmm. The other game, of course, the main game on Friday night. 2 old rivals, two of the oldest teams in the comp. The Roosters in South Sydney at the SCG. 26-16, the Rabbitohs ran out victors over the Roosters. Some good quality football. You'd imagine they're both going to be prominent sides in 25 weeks' time. Tough game in the forwards, especially. I thought Adam Reynolds controlled really well as he can. Yeah. And Cameron Murray, for me, I think he's going to be thereabouts. I wish he was a Queenslander, but at he'll be for New South Wales.
He's a great player, and Adam Reynolds, he's got this ability. I think he's won a grand final before, and I think that South, if he plays well, South play well. He's key to them, and having someone like Wayne Bennett probably can help him too.
Mm-hmm. The first game of Saturday, the Warriors hosted the Bulldogs. Obviously, the tragic happenings throughout the week in Christchurch, it was probably gave them even more of a steely resolve over there. But they look like men amongst boys at times. I think the Warriors, they've always got that capacity to go out and blow a team off the park, and they certainly did that against a pretty disappointing Bulldogs side.
Yeah, very disappointing Bulldogs side. The Warriors, as you said, they're hot and cold, and when they're hot, that's what they can do.
The second game, this was the classic game, the 70s and 80s, the Silvertails, or the Fibros at home against the Silvertails. It was again a pretty tough game. At halftime, there wasn't much in it. 20-6 of the eventual winners, the Tigers, over Manly. Great first game for Coach Maguire, and not so great a homecoming for Hasler.
Yeah, this Hasler going back to Manly. I don't know if I agreed with it when its first round. So I sound like Nostradamus saying it after the fact, but I think Manly can offer something. I just don't know whether they will under Hasler. That's all. There's something there that going back to the old doesn't work. I don't know, but I still got a feeling Manly might sneak a few wins in this year.
Last two remaining premiership winners from 2005, Benji Marshall and Robbie Farah, had big games. I think they're both about 35, 36 now. I think Robbie Farah scored two tries, and Marshall captained them in the absence of Moses Mbai.
Yeah.
So well done to those guys. The last game on the Saturday roster was the Cowboys and the Dragons. We can talk about this a bit longer if you'd like to, Greggy, up in Townsville.
I noticed you've got the score there at 24-6. It was 24-12, just to correct you. Great comeback by the Dragons in the last minute to score a try. Unfortunately, they were still down by 12 points at that time. Are we going on the next game, did you say?
You don't want to talk about Jason Tamalolo's 300-odd metres. He is a freak.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of people in the St. George forward pack that had grass in their teeth because of Tamalolo. No, I don't really want to talk about it anymore. Well done, Cowboys.
Look, the first game of Sunday, the Parramatta Eels against the Penrith Panthers. Now, this was a boil-over. I know, again, it's round one. Looks like Parramatta have unearthed, you don't want to go the crow too early, a really good kid in this Dylan Brown. There was a bit of a tug-of-war between the Warriors and Parramatta for his service, so I believe he's a junior Kiwi.
Yeah, I think that forced Parramatta's hand to basically pick him in A grade earlier than what they probably wanted to by saying, we'll pick you in A grade rather than go back to the Warriors. It worked well. He was really good.
And the last game of the round, a disappointing game, I guess the weather played a part. There's been something like 120 mils of rain on Sunday on the Gold Coast. A lot of people, including us, have had a bit of a lunge on the Titans this year. And they were dreadful. They were woeful. They played in a bathtub, mind you, but so did the Raiders. And there wasn't too many positives for Coach Brown.
No, disappointing. A bit. I saw them in their defence. They were hit and miss. Sometimes it's like they wanted to smash Canberra at times, and sometimes in the wet, you fall off, and that's what happened. They fell off a few tackles and that. So they're disappointing. The Titans, Canberra, Ricky Stewart, done a good job there. Well done to them. What'd you get? I got about 3, I think, out of 8. Two. Well done. So we're fantastic.
Better times next week. All right, now, Greggy, you brought your top 8 up on social media throughout the week.
Yes.
Would you like to roll through your top 8 and tell us how you came up with with
firstly,
this 8?
It's not in order. There's people telling me I put the Dragons first, but look, Dragons, Roosters, Bunnies, Broncos, Titans, Panthers, Storm, and Cowboys. No particular order. I'm pretty confident about 3 of them now. Maybe 4. I think Bunnies, Roosters, Storm, they're locks. Those 3. Cowboys are close to a lock. They've got a lot of depth in that forward pack. Jeez, they've got some depth. Hess off the bench and so on and so forth.
Big. They're just all big men, aren't they? Yeah.
And people struggle going to Cowboys up there, going up to Townsville. So I think they're close to a lock for the 8. Panthers were disappointing. Titans were disappointing. The Dragons were probably a little bit disappointing. The Broncos weren't. The Broncos probably they played all right. But the Titans were the ones I think I went all in. I think yourself too. We both thought they'd go all right. What about your top 8? How are you looking?
Look, I think the Roosters, for mine, they're not changed as we mentioned last week. So I would, if I had to have my house on a team, I think it's the Roosters at the moment. Pretty much look quite similar to yours, Greg. I think South will be up there in some capacity. Bennett's inherited a very good side.
Yes.
I think the Broncos showed why a lot of people have picked them in the top 4 or 5 this year. I think the Dragons have a quality side. They'll be there somewhere around the top 4 or 5, 6. I mentioned last week the West Tigers. I was really happy to see them play this way this week. I think they're going to shock a few sides. I wouldn't throw the Titans away yet. As I said, that was a disappointing game for them this week, but I think they'll be there around finals. Newcastle, there's a lot of enthusiasm. A young side. I'm not sure, like a lot of other people, with Ponga at 5'8". I'd love to see him, running off the 5'8" rather than supplying the ball for others. But time will tell.
Yeah, I think the Titans also, Ash Taylor pulled out last minute. He was out of the game, and Roberts got injured. So
in the first 15 minutes,
probably got to pull him a little bit of slack there when you lose your 2 top playmakers. One that close to the start of the game, and the other one during the game. I think we've got to give him a little bit of slack there.
All right, so let's have a look at round 2. Round 2 coming up after this. Pretty good round, I thought. It typified a normal round 1, I guess. There were some crackers of games, and some looked a little bit dusty and had a few cobwebs. We kick off round 2 on Thursday night with the Dragons and the Rabbitohs, 2 great rivals.
Yep.
Obviously, you guys will be wanting to bounce back. The Rabbitohs be pretty happy with their form against the reigning premiers.
Yeah, the bounce back theory. You've got to go on the bounce back theory early in the year. It does.
The only way is up.
The only way is up. It's great, Yaz said. But yeah, you got to go the bounce back theory, and hopefully that happens with the Dragons. I don't know. If Frizzell's out, I doubt it. I think the Rabbitohs will do the Dragons, unfortunately.
All right. I'm going Dragons this round. So out there probably go against me. I think in patches they played quite well against the Cowboys, but I think McGregor will go back and address a few areas that they didn't go well in. I think that it's going to be a tight one. I agree.
I'm going to Dragons now. I'm changing my mind. Dragons.
Friday, look, this is going to be an interesting one considering the Raiders pulled off a pretty good victory against probably not the greatest of opponents on Sunday. The Raiders and the Storm. I saw enough of the Storm the other night to suggest you're not going to back against them too many times this year. I think the Storm will win 12+.
Yeah, I agree, because I think the Raiders will be leg weary too. You're playing on a Sunday and you've got to back up on a Friday. 5 days later after playing, it rained on the Gold Coast. I think you said before, 125 mil. I think the Storm will just have fitter legs and be ready, fresher legs.
All right, the Broncos-Cowboys, probably it's a modern rivalry. We talked about the Dragons and the Rabbitohs being a traditional rivalry. They haven't had too many duds over the last 5 or 6 years. It's an interesting one. Broncos will be without James Roberts, I'd imagine, with that back injury. Matt Lodge. Cowboys will be really buoyant after that good win against the Dragons. I'm tipping the Cowboys, but probably, with a point or two, I'd imagine.
I'm going with you.
All right, we go to Saturday. Sharks, Titans. Sharks would be disappointed with their loss against Newcastle. Titans would be just disappointed with everything they did against Canberra. Tip there, Greggy?
Do I have to? Sharks.
The Knights and Panthers. Interesting one, this one. Great win by a new team, I guess, as far as their structure. A lot of them haven't played together. The Panthers were probably red-hot favourites against the Eels. They didn't get the chocolates there. I'm going Knights.
I'm going Knights.
It's at home. Manly Roosters. Manly, particularly in the second half against the Tigers, didn't have a lot.
Yep.
I think the Roosters will. I think this is the worst possible time to play the Roosters after they lose. They don't lose very often. I think that the Roosters could put a score on.
I'm going Roosters in a tighter one than you. I think it might be a 1-12 sort of. Maybe it's 8 points. Roosters by 8. I think Manly have fight a lot harder at their home ground.
We go to Sunday, the Bulldogs Eels. Talk about rivalries, particularly the team to the 80s.
Yep.
Got a few mates who'll be watching this with intently.
Definitely.
The Bulldogs faced a very good Warriors side last week. I think that they'll come up against a very enthusiastic young Eels team. Again, they're probably just getting structures together. it's very difficult to back the Bulldogs in last week's form. I'm going to Eels.
I'm going Bulldogs. I'm going for the bounce back on that one, just because of the bounce back theory. Purely on that, on the fact that you play that badly in round one, you tend to pick yourself up and dust yourself off and come back round two. And I think the Eels, they surprised themselves, and I think based on that theory, I'm thinking that the Bulldogs will turn it around and that the Eels might be in for a loss here. I reckon Bulldogs by about 4.
And the round 2 wraps up with the Tigers hosting the Warriors.
Yeah.
I think this is the match of the round.
This potential. Yeah.
You tip there?
Oh, I'm tipping Tigers. I think Tigers are good at home. They're a good side. They'll Tigers by a few.
I think if the Tigers can beat the Warriors this week, people will really be seriously considering them a real deal.
I reckon they'll win by a few. What about you? Do you reckon they'll win by much? Or
I think that it depends. The Warriors. What Warriors team turns up traditionally? Yeah. I thought they did really well. The new half, along with Blake Green, I thought they led them around the field really well. They've got massive forwards. It's going to be a tight one, I think. I would imagine there'll be 2 to 4 points in time.
Okay.
All right, that's our rugby league section for this week. We'd like to hear your thoughts and views and your tips as we go into round 2. Greggy, an amazing effort from our men's one day side last week. Not only did they have to win in India from 2-0 down, they did it, which is a record in itself, I think, over in India. They had to contend with Kohli, who is arguably in the best form anyone's been in the last few years. So, an amazing performance.
Yeah, it was a 2-0, ended up winning 3-2, so well done to the Australian cricket team, men's cricket team. They were outstanding. Even though a couple of the games they lost, they played quite well, so it was there for them. It really does set them up for the World Cup. They're now off to Dubai to play Pakistan, I think, in a 5-match series, but well done to Australia, great effort. A lot of new talent coming through, young talent. Jai Richardson's, Ashton Turner was unbelievable. Yeah, good, very good.
It presents a couple of good headaches, I guess, for the selectors. They're allowed to take 15, is that right?
Yeah, 15 is what you take to start with. I think if you get injuries or something, you can replace them once if they're injured. But yeah, it's 15. 15, hop on the plane, and obviously, as I've said before, the Marsh boys will be at the airport to wave goodbye to them. So, yeah.
Well, we've got Warner and Smith to come back in.
Yep.
And that's a winning squad, I guess. Anyone an obvious omission from the current squad?
I don't think there's an obvious omission. I think because they all played so well. I think Finch is going to be close because Kawaja scored, some big 200 in a row. Yeah. So I think if anyone, Finch is the one that's got to look out for his spot.
Well, Sean Marsh is in that 15.
Yeah, I said watching from the airport. I apologise to Sean Marsh. I think that's for the Test series. The one-day series is a must.
He'll make it to the transit round at least.
I think he'll at least be in the transit round.
All right. Now, last week we looked briefly at the hits and misses of the last Australian summer against India and Sri Lanka. We looked at the batsmen last week. Today we're going to have a bit of a look at the bowlers. So, Greggy, first Rose we'll discuss today is, we mentioned him last week with his batting actually, but Pat Cummins is just from strength to strength. Got his figures. He was bowling at about 22 now. His test bowling average is 22. He's just shy of 100 wickets. First bowler on the plane to England.
Yes. And once he gets to 100 wickets, I think if Stark and himself and Hazelwood and Lyons are together, that's 4 bowlers with over 100 test wickets all in the same time, which is a very rare feat nowadays. So, yeah, he'll get there, and he is the first picked.
Another automatic selection, you'd guess, is the GOAT, the Nathan Lyon. He just keeps on keeping on. He's got close to 350 test wickets now. It's amazing how quickly they've seemed to accumulate. For an off-spinner, an Australian off-spinner, he's bowling, his test average is 30 or around 30, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is for an off-spinner. He's obviously definitely going to go. As I've said before, I may not have said it on this famous show of ours, but as I've said before, England struggle against leg spin. So I wouldn't mind seeing a leg spinner go over there with him for the Test series. And the one-day stuff, not so as much, but in the Test series, I definitely think a leg spinner should go over there with him.
Anyone in mind?
Zampa's playing one-day cricket, but I don't know about test match cricket, sweeps, and there's a few around, but no one's really... You don't take one just for the sake of it, in saying all that, but I just think they struggle so much against leg spin. Lapachet,
Part-timer.
Yeah.
Last week we mentioned a couple of Thorns. We mentioned a few Roses in the batting. We mentioned a couple of Thorns, the Marsh brothers, and probably unluckily Finch. It's really hard. The bowlers, I thought, tried hard last summer. There were a few calls, I guess, from some sections of the media about Mitchell Starc being rested, or by some, I think Shane Warne suggested at one stage to be dropped. But he did bounce back pretty well especially in the Sri Lankan series. I think he got 12 or 14 wickets there at about 15 or 16 in the average. He'll be there.
Yeah, he'll be there. I think the Sri Lankan series covered a few cracks. I think there's still a few cracks in Mitchell Starc at the moment, unfortunately. But if he gets it right, he can run through England. West Indies ran through England.
Mm.
So you get him at the peak of his powers alongside of Pat Cummins and Hazelwood and Richardson.
Unless the other guy I wanted to make mention briefly, he debuted against the Sri Lankans. There was an injury. Hazelwood was out.
Yep.
He came in and he looked like he just belonged there, didn't he? I think he ended up with about 7 or 8 wickets overall in a couple of games. He's got that early swing. How do you think that will help him over in England?
Yeah,
if he goes?
I probably wouldn't have taken him in the one-day series. It depends. I suppose you've got the World Cup's coming up, so they had to take him. I would have liked to have seen him use the Duke a few times over here in Australia just to see how he went with the Duke. He's a must for the England tour. And he's only 22 or 23.
Mm.
So long career ahead of him. Swings the ball, which is a bonus. I don't know if you've noticed in the Shield that obviously with the Dukes they're using now, the wickets are tumbling left, right, centre. And an interesting thing I've noticed is left-arm orthodox has been getting wickets. So a couple of left-arm orthodox, Holland's getting wickets, and Andrews from South Australia. So very interesting summer still ahead here with one game to go, I think, in the Sheffield Shield to see if there's 1 or 2 spots for the Ashes remaining.
I guess the focus now, World Cup around the corner.
Yep.
Exciting times. I think if Australia, before that series against England, against India, we would have been, fairly long odds that defeating India over there has certainly, I think, made them a bit more of a buoyant team. That they seem very confident going in, as they should be.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a good series. The World Cup, obviously, and then the Ashes, and Australians should be looking forward to it. I think we're going to go really well.
All right, that's our cricket wrap up this week. Love to hear your opinions, your views, and anything that you have cricket-wise. Let us know throughout the week. And that's us for another week. If the Marsh brothers lawyers need to contact us, make sure you go straight to Greggy. I'm right behind you, Mitch and Sean. Thank you for following us. All the support that we've had this week has been much appreciated. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and also subscribe to YouTube. So thanks, Greggy. Another good week in front of us.
Bring on week 3.
Absolutely. So thank you out there for joining us, and may the bounce of the ball go your way.
Kick to the corner.